Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this is the Talamanca Review. It's Thursday, the 11th of December. It's 10:17 p.m. And here I am. I've been away for a couple days. I've just put in a couple 14-hour days at the computer. I have a bit of OCD. I'll be the first to admit that. But it's passionate OCD, meaning I'm so involved in something that I'm just in a state of enchantment and the excitement of being able to do something new and learning something new, which is of value to me, is such that it doesn't seem like I'm 14 hours in front of the computer. I take little breaks to meditate. I do 33-minute meditation sessions to clear my mind and come back at the tasks I'm working on anew. It's a wonderful feeling. I think being completely immersed in something is a beautiful thing and a kind of a spiritual state in and of itself. So, and this is my work. This isn't work I'm doing for money. This is my work. And what I mean by that is it's stuff that I want to do just because it needs to be done. So briefly, and I hope I don't lose listenership for talking about this, but it's artificial intelligence again. And I have to say, from my vantage point, it is the most brilliant tool since I don't know when. I'm starting to understand the hype behind this, and I'm telling you right now, there are 1,000,001 business opportunities out there for people who learn AI. And it doesn't take much. I have a $10 US a month Copilot subscription. Copilot is an AI chat window that works inside. I've moved away from Gemini. I found it was giving me problems. I've experimented with all of them now. I've downloaded models and I'm working with AI offline. But you got to have a supercomputer to do that, like something that's going to cost about 5,000 US. But it depends what you're doing, right? Now, I've looked at like most of the models out there now, the OpenAI stuff, the Ollama stuff, the Claude stuff, the DeepSeek, everything. And it is blowing my mind what this stuff can do. Now, I see huge holes in its capabilities. And those holes reveal to me that there's no real intelligence, as we understand it as human beings, behind AI at this point. Okay? I'm not saying the AGI they're predicting in the near future is not going to be the Antichrist some people think it might be. And I don't have an opinion on that right now, except let's get on with it. Because if it's in our timeline, it's there for a reason, because the Creator wants us to grow from it. Remember, we grow from the negative and the positive. It's not just sun and water that makes plants grow. A good heap of cow shit does it too. So the negative and the positive poles are the dynamic tension that produces growth in us. And growth is always adaptability. It's consciousness evolution. So at this stage of the game, I am a full-on proponent of artificial intelligence. I have done my 500, I don't know how long it's been now. I've been fooling around with this. I started using it for work about 6 months ago. It worked brilliantly. I've now moved into new areas, and I'm expanding, I'm studying, I'm watching videos on how to prompt correctly, and I'm building my own agentic systems now for my needs. And it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. Okay? So I'll just tell you what I've done in the last 2 days. Each of these 14-hour days has been one project. So the first one was a book that was the product of 10 interviews from the Danny Jones podcast called The Concrete Podcast, with a K, not a C. And I titled it The Age of Disclosure, We're Not Alone. And I chose a thematic book on UFOs. And what that first 14-hour day did for me was it taught me how to refine a process to build a book from almost any collection of information. But I'm gonna stress this again, okay? It's not gonna work for you unless you could do it without the AI. Okay? So you have to know what you want. You have to know exactly what you're looking for, and you have to be able to articulate it to the AI. And the way that's done is by creating a plan. So AI generally has 4 modes. So there's agent, and agent is the most powerful. That will actually code for you. Okay, so let me tell you the first thing about AI. Now, early adopters of AI, like a year and a half ago, were coming out with websites selling services. And they made millions of dollars in months. But this phenomenon is moving so quickly now that ideas for businesses are obsolete in 6 months or a year. So, for example, 3-4 years ago, I used to use an online service called Descript, Descript. Some of you may know it. I paid $35 US a month for it. And what they would do was you would upload an audio or a video file, and it would process it and produce a transcript for you. And I paid $35 a month for that, and I used it for about a year, so I spent $350 US on that, which is half the price of a Mac Mini M4 or M5 chip, which is a lot of money, right? This is the state of AI now. You pay $10 a month, and you build your own transcription application. I swear to God. Okay? So in agent mode, and the agent mode works best in a development environment. Oh, another thing, I also know how to use AI at the command line now. Okay? That means I open up a shell, I log in, and because the companies don't think anyone wants to use it at the command line level, and it's most powerful at the command line level, it is 10 times faster at the command line level. I don't know why, but it is. Okay? The simplest way to use AI for beginners is to just start using it in your browser, or download a DeepSeek or a ChatGPT or any other module or app for your phone and talk to it, right? So the two best ways to use it are in a development environment or at the command line. But you have to be comfortable at the command line. So I've been working at command line in a computing environment for 25 years. I'm very comfortable with it. And that's because I've worked in technology for 25 years. That doesn't mean I'm a developer. That doesn't mean I'm an architect. That doesn't mean I code. That doesn't mean I write competent SQL or that I can build databases. No, those are all specialized tasks, and they get even more specialized as you get into the world of coding and development. You can be a specialist in Java or C++ or Golang or any other language. But I'm competent in a computing environment, meaning I can use the command line very well. I have to use the command line to compile my books. Like every book, any of you who've read my books, that's produced with a program called LaTeX, LaTeX. It's an open source program and literally the best typesetting program in the world. And so that's what I use. And that's compiled at the command line. And you have to be able to interpret errors and correct the errors. Okay, so let me give you an example. So what I used to do is I would compile my book, and if it didn't compile, I would get a list of errors. I would look at the log file that the shell script directed me to. I would go and open up the folder, and the errors will always show the line of the file. So if you have a 20 file book compiled, a file would be a chapter in a book, and then the book file itself is a separate construction, and it gives all of the instructions for the typesetting. So this is like Gutenberg. This is like printing press stuff, right? Your inside margin, your outside margin, what's going to be on the headings, all of these sorts of things, right? And then you would get errors, and you would have to go and you would have to look them up in the file. You'd have to open the file, go to the line number. So when you're working in a development environment, on the left-hand column of the space you type into, it gives you your line numbers. So it says on line 462, this text character is there, and we can't interpret it. And you go and you look, and sure enough, it's something you scraped off the web and copied and pasted into the text as a direct quote. And it wasn't the UTF-8 or UTF-16 base coding system, and so it chokes LaTeX. So it used to be that when I would do this at the command line, this is how I did Stardust Ranch, Light of Darkness, Devil in Us, Galactic Historian, everything. And even when I redid my old novels, God is an Economist and The Stolen Child, it was all done with this system called LaTeX. Now what happens is you compile in an AI environment, and you go into the AI chat, and you bring the base file that you want to compile in, and you say compile this to a PDF, and it's got all your typesetting instructions in it. And the AI does it, and when an error comes up, AI says, okay, I found an error on line 462 of chapter 3. I'm going to go correct it now. And it goes and corrects it. It used to take me a full week to find all the errors in a build file in an 80, 100,000 word book. So there's one thing AI is doing. Let's go back to the transcripts, okay? Because this is mind-boggling when you think of the implications. Think of it from a legal perspective, okay? You don't need stenographers in a courtroom anymore, but I bet you the courts will keep using them, and I bet you the courts will prevent people from bringing in their own recording devices, because the courts are generally, well, specifically, they're very corrupt. And they don't want a real procedure happening in our courts. Okay? Every single trial that happens in a North American court, and Canada is as bad as the United States and vice versa. Every single file, every single case that goes into a court is somewhat loaded. If it's you versus the state, okay? And especially if it's you versus the state at a statutory level, okay? It could be a revenue matter with the IRS. The courts rarely rule in the defendant, on the defendant's side. And if you think I'm being hyperbolic or conspiratorial, let me tell you, I spent 3 or 4 years examining this from about 2002 to 2005. It was my hobby horse and my passion on the side. I just could, and there's a reason I got into it. It's a whole other story. I won't get into it tonight, and I spoke to hundreds of people. I joined various groups, and we all confirm the same things. And not only that, they sell you the transcripts. So they take you to court. You go through something in the court, a preliminary hearing or something, and you go home and you think, this doesn't sound right to me. And you look up the law, you read the act, and you go, yeah, the court made a mistake. To prove they made a mistake, you need the transcript. They sell it to you. It's like, I don't know, like 50 cents, $1 a page. So if it's a 100-page transcript, it's $100. So it's the most unbelievable racket in the world. This is why Jordan Maxwell used to rip on the court systems all the time. He says, what do you do on a court? You play a game, right? A tennis court, a basketball court, right? And he's absolutely right, good old Jordan. Oh, by the way, the moment I put up that Essential Jordan Maxwell book, I got locked out of my KDB account. They asked me to verify my identity. So I uploaded my passport, and I've been locked out for 7 or 8 days now. I don't even know what my book sales are for December, which is usually a good month. People buy books for Christmas, right? Amazing. And you go to try to talk through their customer support. It's very difficult. I sent an email in tonight. So there's just one example of how AI is going to change everything, okay? AI is going to change everything. This AI revolution is real. But now, I mean, aside from the lingering question of artificial general intelligence and the whole Skynet thesis from James Cameron's Terminator, that issue I can't speak to right now. I've spoken to it in the past. I think a cybernetic corpus could embody a very powerful entity from the other side that could have agency in the world through that physical mechanism. The same way we have agency, our spirit and our being, our soul, has agency in this world through this incarnation. I've spoken at length about this on the Talamanca Review. And by the way, that idea of agency applies to everything. It disqualifies the Gnostic thesis, everything. Okay? Because the archons or the demagogue can act on this plane of existence, this physical realm, directly. It needs to seduce and hijack human beings, gain access to the bodies to act upon the world. Which may explain why they're breaking down human beings so much with the chemtrails, the vaccines, and everything. It seems to me like people are being set up for mass possession or mass oppression. So yeah, I mean, I'm just completely down with this AI revolution. So I'll tell you what I did. So I got in contact with Julian Dory, Sean Ryan, and Dan. I couldn't find how to contact Danny Jones, but and I said, look, are you interested in discussing a publishing division? Now, when you download a transcript, like let's say that you download a 3.5-hour conversation on any popular podcast, but only certain podcasts work. They have to have very interesting guests, and the host has to let the guest do 90% of the talking and just redirect conversation with questions that anybody would ask if they were in the host seat, because it's logically what people want to hear about, what people want to know. It wouldn't really work with the Joe Rogan podcast. The Joe Rogan podcast is probably the purest conversational podcast on the internet. It's fascinating, the space that Joe has cultivated for himself and how he does it. It's amazing to me. But these other ones like Sean Ryan and Danny Jones and Julian Dory, they're very interesting. And so if I were to get a contract to do the publishing for Concrete Publishing, the Danny Jones podcast, I would do a 100,000 word book on UFOs. And I would have like 10 interviews and all the big names in the UFO field, the ex-NASA people and everything, and put together a compendium of essays. And with Julian Dory, he's interviewed a whole bunch of underworld people, like Italian mafia guys who were directly ordered by the Vatican, and just everything you ever wanted to know about the underworld, Mexican cartels, biker gangs, everything. So you could do a book, Julian Dory podcast, The Underworld Files. And so the way now, if you just take, so a 3.5 hour interview, when you create a transcript, that will be about 45,000 words. 45,000 words is about 55% of the entire length of Stardust Ranch. That's one transcript. But the transcript has everything. It has the ums, the ahs, everything, right? It's just a raw transcript. So the first stage is you have, and the thing about AI is you have to work with it you have to direct it to files which contain a series of concatenated prompts, one after the other. Okay? What is this? And I know this is probably boring for you guys, but I've been away from the Talamanca Review for a while, couple days, and I felt compelled and I wanted to do a podcast, and I also felt compelled to do a podcast. And this podcast is always generally about what's on my mind, and right now AI is on my mind. So that's maybe the last 30 minutes I'll shift to something else, but so what you have to do is you have to then convert the transcript to a workable file form. And everything is done in text. There's no Microsoft Word, Adobe InDesign, none of that. You're always working with raw text. Okay? That's the only thing an IDE can read is raw text. So that you're getting into the markdown languages like Markdown or ASCII doc or things like this. And then what happens is you have to clean up the file. Okay? So you write a series of, and I've created all these, I have a library of prompt files now. My own library of prompt files. Okay. Now this has been building over weeks and weeks and weeks, learning everything the hard way, trial and error. I haven't read a stitch of documentation, except the documentation, the general documentation on the difference between agent, plan, edit, and ask modes of AI. And all four of them are very different, and you have to know what they are. Okay. Agent being the most powerful. Did I finish my story about the transcript? Yeah, so you say into the AI chat box, create a Python system that can take an audio or a video file and produce a transcript in Markdown format. And then the AI just goes and writes the script for you. And if you were a developer doing it without AI, if you were working for a software company and you got that task on a Monday morning, they'd probably give you the whole week to finish it. But when it was done, it would have to be error proof, right? Because there's a lot of things that go into it. AI is done in like 90 seconds. Then you write another Python system and it creates virtual environments right in your workspace in the IDE. You create another Python system that says, when I input a YouTube URL into the chat box, I want you to pull the transcript from it. And it does it. So, that's also a series of prompts and a Python file. And then so what happens is you develop these workspaces that'll have a half dozen Python files and a half dozen prompt files in some text format like Markdown. And they all start to work together. It becomes like a computer program. You're really writing your own program. So I have created a system that basically can convert any podcast to a book. So I've written a prompt file with about 15 prompts in it. Its only job is to go through the transcript, identify who the guest of the transcript is, capture their speaking habits, and reproduce those speaking habits into a literary voice when the transcript is done. So if I were to do a Jason Georgiani transcript, if you were to read the finished Jason Georgiani chapter, it would be like the chapter would be 10,000 words distilled from a 45,000 word transcript. And it would sound exactly like Jason Georgiani as you hear him, but with all the grammatical errors taken out. So my prompts, through a series of prompts, what happens is it creates the voice of the speaker, but grammatically perfect. So it replicates the literary voice, which would be the cousin to the spoken voice. And you can do it with anybody, right? If I were to take 2 hours of Bill Murray talking, which would be about 30,000 word transcript, I could write a 5,000 word essay that distilled what Bill Murray said in the transcript, and you would swear Bill Murray wrote it. Okay, because it just sounds exactly like Bill Murray sounds. This is why AI is freaking me out. So this all leads me to today. So the only person I've been talking about this with is David Dubine. And David says, hey, do you think you could do a book for me? I said, okay. Now, all of the work I had done up until this project was basically about capturing a literary voice from a spoken voice and writing chapters that were pure text. David challenged me in ways that I had not been challenged yet. Okay? And what David challenged me to do was to create a book in AI from transcripts that could also incorporate graphs, tables, go through a bunch of language in transcript, and select from those transcripts for a certain chapter a pull quote. You know what a pull quote is, right? The text is a bit big. You see them in magazines all the time. And do a pull quote and break it up into sections. Break up every chapter into sections. Use bulleting for information that is iterative, like a list of things. And so I had to write a whole new prompting system. But because I've spent like 500 hours on this already, I was able to do it fairly quickly. So at about 8:30 this morning, David gave me, I think, 25 MP3s in a zip file. He put them up on Google Drive and I downloaded them. And by the end of today, in a 6:9 format, which is the same 6 inches tall wide, 9 inches tall. That's the standard paperback format for Kindle. I have a 450-page book done for David with 20 chapters of about 5,000 words, breaking down his whole thesis. Okay? And it's a lot like cooking. You have to do, when you're prompting, you have to do everything in its correct sequence. Okay? So obviously I had the extraction of the transcripts. That work had already been done on other projects, so I just imported that system I created to get the transcripts. Then I delete the MP3 files. And then I went through all of the files and I said, write me a book outline for a book that's 20 pages, 20 chapters, 5,000 words per chapter. And you do this in the planning. Okay, not the agent aspect of AI, the plan. Okay, and the reason you have to choose the right agent mode or the right AI mode is planning and editing will generally deal with what's right in front of you. And an agent will go out, is the one that goes out and looks for other corroboration and stuff, which is fine. Absolutely fine. Anyways, I just spent the whole day on this. I'll be done the book by early next week. It needs further editing. Everything has to be read. It's 100,000 words. But I have a new business model here. I could take any podcast out there that has real information and distill it into literary form. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why would you do that, Bruce? Why would people read a book when they can just listen to a podcast? Well, because if I could give you pretty much everything important that was said in a 3.5 or 4 hour podcast, if I could give it to you in a 10,000 word chapter, you're going to get it a lot quicker. You can read 10,000 words in about 45, 50 minutes if you're a competent reader. And I believe in my heart that people want to read. And I believe that we're in this kind of loop now. It kind of goes like this. Like you remember the old Hot Wheels tracks you could build in the car? If you got enough momentum when you were a kid, the little car could go down the track and do the loop without falling down. And that's what we're in now. We're in these loops. And when we hit a loop, what happens is new technology comes out. But at every moment when the new technology comes out, there's an abandonment of an old technology that gets resurrected. This is my observation. So how would I give an example of this? Well, when the television came out, people stopped listening to radio a lot. It used to be radio was the main medium up until the television. The television doesn't come out until I think like the 1940s or 50s. I mean, I could look it up, but I mean, this isn't... the Telemaker Review is not a factual podcast. It's a conversational op-ed podcast. When television came out, people stopped listening to radio a lot. Okay? There were certain survivors like Howard Stern and others, But generally speaking, what happened was radio fell away. Now, radio wasn't resurrected until about 2000 in a significant way until about 2010, when all of these internet radio stations started up. Like Clyde Lewis, like Alex Jones pioneered what I would call internet television. All right, no Alex Jones, no Redacted, no Tim Pool. Okay, now the difference between Alex Jones and lone wolf podcasters like Candace Wolf is Alex produced a full network and did like a 3 or 4 hour show every day. He had reporters, he had field reporting, he had researchers. And because nobody thought that internet television was going to take off, in this unguarded space, Alex came in with a very radical message that the mainstream would not touch. And yet the public wanted to hear it. Now, prior to the internet and its ability to project video, there was no option. Okay? And so when it became viable, Alex became big, right? Look at Bill Cooper used to do his show on shortwave radio. I'm going to definitely do an essential Bill Cooper book. I'm going to download all his Hour of Our Time radio shows. I think there's 30 or 40, and I'm going to do a 500-page book, The Essential Bill Cooper. And this is curating, okay? So curating is a very old aspect of the publishing industry. So a curator would put together something like, if you went to university and you studied English literature, you were probably forced to buy Norton's 20th Century American Poetry Anthology, or the Oxford 20th Century, or the Oxford Anthology of British Poetry, going back to Shakespeare up through Keats and John Donne and all of the great English poets right up until the 20th century. That's curating, okay? And curated work, believe it or not, sells very well. Very, very well. Magazine writing is a form of curation, okay? Absolutely. So what I'm doing is I'm curating books. And because I love writing and I love producing books, it's my great passion in life, I'm having a field day. Which is why the 14-hour days go by in a blink, and I don't mind them. You know? I enjoy them, and I enjoy the fruit of my work at the end of the day. It's absolutely, absolutely fascinating. You know? Absolutely fascinating. So there you go. It's a series of scripts, but AI can curate books. I think a lot of screenwriters might be using it to help building synopsis and stuff like that. But I mean, every industry is going to be inundated with material now. But here's the thing you have to remember. AI won't really work for you unless you've already mastered your trade at the practical level. You have to know what typesetting is. You have to know what language editing is. You have to be able to recognize errors. You have to be able to recognize deviations. And a deviation would be, well, that doesn't sound like him. What happened there? And you cut it out because it doesn't fit. You have to be able to curate it. Okay, it's like weeding a garden. And you have to know a lot of stuff that I learned as a technical writer. You have to know complicated book layout systems like ASCII-Doc, like LaTeX and things like this. And they're very complicated. They have their own coding languages to compile these books. By the way, LaTeX is what's used by most of the graduate departments of all universities in Europe and North America. LaTeX is the typesetting system to write white papers for CERN. Everybody, like the International Association of Geologists, they all write in LaTeX. And nobody's improved on LaTeX. It came out in 1974, and it is still the best computer-based typesetting system out there. So I'm having a field day with the AI. And the book I did today for David, if I were to do, and I could do it without the AI, but if I did it without the AI, David's book would probably take a year to do, working 4 to 6 hours a day, 5 days a week. It would take a year to do. And I did it in a day. That's what AI is. Okay? It's mind-boggling. Mind-boggling. It's going to take over a lot of industries, and it's going to be used. I've already heard that law firms aren't hiring junior lawyers anymore because the AI has replaced the interning lawyer. Now, this is going to create a gap because if those new young lawyers don't get trained, well, what are they going to do when all the old partners and associates at the law firm die? They don't have a next generation coming up. It's interesting because this burn the bridge economics has been going strong since free trade. And burn the bridge is where, or I should say, better metaphor would be break the circle. Or burning the bridge means the next generation can't get over the river. They can't pass over the river. Okay? So we lost a generation of labor in free trade because what free trade did, especially when it broke out into regions larger than just Canada and the United States, it destroyed the labor movement, as I've said numerous times on this podcast. And the unions were almost immediately destroyed because what CEO and stockholders at a stockholder meeting are going to say, yeah, we should give them guys a living wage. I mean, if you're a stockholder, your goal is to make money. And if the CEO and the board of directors say, well, we want to move production to Mexico, it's going to cost us X amount of dollars to build a plant, but we'll recoup our money in 24 months, 2 years, due to reduced labor costs. And then for every year the plant continues after it's paid off, we based on the volume of cars we're selling now, we're going to double our profits. And this is why all the money has been ending up in fewer and fewer hands. You see? This is the system that they created. So that's what I call it, burning the bridge. So free trade burned the bridge of labor. Okay? Like furniture makers, stuff like that. There's still construction jobs. My son works construction, very hardworking young man. But the more detailed trades and stuff like that, like furniture building and stuff, that was all wiped out when free trade came in, just between Canada and the United States. And it's just been one succession of burnt bridges after that. And when you burn a bridge, what you're doing is you're breaking the society down, because every generation afterwards suffers a little bit. So the baby boomers brought in free trade. That was a free trade thing. And my generation, Gen X, and every generation after me has suffered as a result of that bridge burning. Okay? The only real way to run an economy is to define the boundaries of your territory and the number of people living in your society, and elect a government that does everything for the people inside those borders. But we haven't had nation-driven leaders for 40 years. They've all been globalists. And there's no difference between the left and the right. And I haven't even made up my mind about Trump yet, whether he's with the globalists or whether he's with America. But the more I think about this, and I have been thinking about it a lot lately, it does seem to me that we do have to go to some kind of global system just to avoid redundancy and stuff. Like we don't, I think we should just give car building to the Germans. Nobody does it better than them. Okay? And I don't know how you would do that. I don't know how you would create a global economy that was fair and just. But that's not what they're interested in. They're not interested in fair and just. Yeah. By the way, as a result of this 14-hour workday I did today, I've become something of an expert in David Dubine's work. And the grand solar minimum is a very frightening prospect, and I think David is right. Now, according to all the research, the people who are going to prosper as the sun does what it's going to do, and remember, all of these secret societies, they kind of worship the sun. That's what Jordan Maxwell pointed out. Now, the sun is a being. Okay? I'm a being, you're a being. The sun is its own being. And so, in a sense, it may be a god. And when I say it's a being, I mean it's conscious and it can communicate. The rays of the sun communicate with us, whether you realize that or not. So sun worship is not paganism, and the secret societies are definitely sun worshiping. And the sun worship has also taught them all of the cycles. And there are a tremendous number of cycles related to the sun. And our friend over at Archaics, Jason Brashears, I believe his name is, he gets into this too as well, but it's not 138 years. There is a 138-year cycle, but it's not the devastation or destruction cycle. And what the sun does is it defines when and where you can grow food. And it changes as the sun changes, okay? As the weather changes. Climate change is complete nonsense. There's a whole chapter of that in the book I'm doing for David, debunking climate change as it's been given to us, And the reason they give climate change as their straw man, their Lee Harvey Oswald in this creeping fascism. And David makes the point, we make the point in this book, that if you knew this truth and you were a political leader, would you tell it to the people? And probably the answer is no, because nothing good can come out of it, right? Nothing good can come out of it at all. But I think David's going to end up on some very big podcasts once this book comes out, and maybe the Alex Jones show or whatever, because this book is stunning. There is a profound difference between a well-curated and a well-written book. And even using AI to write, you have to know how to prompt. If you don't know how to write yourself, how are you going to prompt AI to write? How are you going to say, in every chapter I want a dramatic anecdotal opening in the first person, 500 words. And then I want this, and then we get into all the information. But we begin with a story. That story should be in the first person. There should be no ums or ahs, but it should be colloquial. It should be somebody talking around a fire. In 2017, I was so-and-so, and I noticed that all these earthquakes were happening. That's how the book is written. And when you sit down and you read this stuff, it's terrifying. And the terror of it never sank in when I listened to David's podcast in the past. And the reason it never sank in is, believe it or not, me, you, we have all built up these psychic sensors to protect us from the noise and doom pollution out there. So we'll listen with our left ear while we're working. Oh yeah, what'd you do today, Bruce? Well, I did a bunch of tech writing and I listened to a couple podcasts on the grand solar minimum. What's that? Oh, something to do with the sun. It's very interesting. There's a way information comes in when it's spoken that is completely different from the way information comes in when it's written, and written well. And when you get it on the page, it's like, oh my God, this is kind of terrifying. It's more terrifying than climate change, which is why they're not telling the public, okay? And David has been profoundly censored, okay? Profoundly censored. So this is what's going on in my life. I'll get back to regular podcasting tomorrow and talk about what I usually talk about. The world hasn't changed any. We're still on the same cycle. I will say this. There is one other thing that's on my mind that is sort of Talamanca review related. Maybe I'll do a podcast on it tomorrow, but I'll hint at it tonight. Throughout my podcasting, I've in a very clinical and metaphysical way, I've talked about the dangers of sodomy, the dangers of tinkering with the base chakra in our chakra system. and how using the anus as a conduit of pleasure or perversion of nature would have psychic and spiritual consequences. Everything I said on my podcast was not only affirmed, but doubled down on by Milo Yiannopoulos in a Tucker Carlson interview he gave last week. And I highly recommend you watch it. You can now think of Milo as by the way, he's in therapy now to stop being homosexual. He's no longer homosexual. And you can consider him a gay whistleblower. Now remember my position. I'm not a racist. I'm not a bigot. Homosexuality occurs. But it occurs in about 1% of the population. Western societies are practicing it at a level somewhere between 25 and 35% now. When you throw in bisexuality and everything, 25 to 35%. That's a perversion. That's not the 1% represented in the natural rhythms of our species. Okay? Now, why did I tune into this? Why did I bring this up? Well, all of the big tech guys now, with the exception of maybe Elon Musk, Sam Altman's gay, sodomite. The Palantir guy, Jewish. They're all Jewish gay men, Jewish sodomites. Okay, like Yuval Noah Harari. Okay, in fact, this is the podcast I'm going to do tomorrow. Okay, the Catamites are in charge, or the sodomites are in charge. They're a little perverse, but I'll do them in a way where I don't know. You'll see. I'll do it tomorrow. Anyways, that's a nice return podcast. David's book will be ready mid next week. I have a lot of editing and final touches to do. You still have to finish everything off. The AI does the heavy lifting, but you have to verify everything and make corrections and make sure it's what you want. And you have to know how to do that. So don't think you could write a book if you've never written a book before, because AI is there. You can't. And I'm not trying to discourage you. I mean, you could learn to, but it would begin by learning how to write a book. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this has been the Talamanca Review.